Listening to the Be a Better Being podcast hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning in to the Be a Better Being podcast. I'm Michelle Zellner, your host. I am delighted to be joined today by Toni Marinucci, who I had the privilege of being on her podcast. I think we decided about 2.5 years ago, early 2020. So Toni, welcome to the Be a Better Being podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for being a guest on mine. It was a pleasure chatting with you about your book.
Well, thank you. Absolutely. You know, that was, it feels like a million years ago. So much has happened, obviously, right?
Yes.
You are now also a published author, so I want to talk about that. But before we dive into all those details, give the audience a little bit of background. Who is Toni Marinucci? Give us like kind of the thumbnail sketch of growing up and we'll bring into present day.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up on Long Island, New York. I am from a Greek and Italian family, so we love food, lots of food. Unfortunately, though, I was overweight and teased about it, but then also told to finish my plate, but then I was like looked down on when I did finish my plate. So I got a lot of mixed messages as a kid from family members, and then also when I would go to school, I would get teased. My crushes never liked me back. The boys would tease me for being overweight, and it was just not a really fun childhood. I mean, I had very fun moments and beautiful moments, but then I also had some pretty dark moments. So I learned really quickly that my weight was tied to my worth, or what I thought was that my weight was tied to my worth, and that somehow, if I never lost the weight, I would never get a boyfriend, I would never make varsity, I would never be an straight A student. Like somehow I believed that my weight was like the epitome of everything. And so I tried really hard to lose weight, and I think like many people, I did it in the very, very unhealthy ways at first. I would just skip meals. I would undereat. I was always an athlete, even though I was in a bigger body. I always played sports, but I would come home from basketball practice and work out more. So it was tried to get rid of all my calories through exercise. And then that would lead to overeating, which then led to undereating. It just was like a very vicious cycle. So fast forward to today, that's actually what led me to become a registered dietitian. I wanted to learn how to eat in a balanced way, in a healthy way, because even though I thought I knew that I didn't want to stay overweight in that body just because I didn't feel good, but I also didn't like the way that the dieting was making me feel either. So it was like these two extremes. So I really wanted to figure out how could I find the middle. And so after many years of learning how to fuel my body, and then beyond school, I learned most of the life lessons came from practical application of, just being a human being, regardless of my expertise. And now today I'm a owner of Diet Tips with Toni, where we ironically teach people how not to diet, but really just find balance in their eating habits and really break up with these ideas of extremes and restrictions, and helping people to really love the body that they're in, whether they choose to lose the weight, whether they choose to not lose weight, just being in their body and caring for it, because we only get one. And it's really changing the mindset around food and how you see yourself. And, that's what I do now. And now I actually have a team of dietitians who are helping, our clients get those results. And it's been really cool to see the transformation both in myself and also in my business.
Well, I will echo that. It has been really cool to see it, because I have continued to stalk you since I was on your podcast a few years ago. And even in that very first conversation that you and I had, I knew that we were synergistically aligned with the things that we grew up with. Now, you are considerably younger than me. You graduated, I graduated high school in 90, which is the year you were born.
No way. Michelle, you're not, there's no way. I mean, I knew you were older than me, but I didn't realize that you look young.
Well, thank you. I mean,
yeah.
I'm gonna give it good genetics and the somewhat healthy lifestyle. I'm not gonna lie. There's maybe
taking care of yourself definitely helps the aging it definitely decreases the aging process for sure.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Well, thank you for that. But that really isn't why I said that. My point of highlighting that is that we grew up with the same messages, right? We're 18 years apart. My generation grew up that your weight is your worth. And it's all about, clean your plate, but should you be eating that? Or didn't you just eat? Are you eating again? Don't you need to eat? Hey, you shouldn't eat that much. So unfortunately, this is not unique to any generation. And still, I'm talking to Gen Zers. I'm talking to parents of 12-year-olds. I don't know that this is ever going to go away, quite honestly. And I think, that's why it is so important to have people like you and me who have been through it and have figured out how to do it the right way, in my opinion, and maybe your opinion as well, which is to break up with the diet culture and the diet mentality. And I know when we had that conversation on your podcast, you and I talked about that, how we have these pivotal moments in our own lives where we're like, this isn't right. And this isn't the way I want to continue to lead my life. So can you go back in your time capsule and remember what was that pivotal moment where you're like, you know what? I'm going to do it differently now.
Well, I wish I could say it was one time, but it wasn't one time. It's like I figured it out and then I allowed the messaging to come back. So I'm going to be really honest. So the first time I figured I needed to change was probably when I decided I wanted to go to school to be a dietitian. So I remember the very restrictive eating habits were mostly freshman year and sophomore year. And then junior year, it's like, what do you want to be, when you grow up? You have to choose your college and your major. And I was like, I remember being like, okay, like I still want to feel better in my body. And I think weight loss is still a goal of mine, but I can't do it this way. Like I am miserable. I can't focus. I have no energy. Like I'm not present with my loved ones. Like this can't be this is not it. Like I'm done. So I went to school to learn, but then I think sometimes the more sometimes that can be really problematic because you then know so much. And then I became like obsessed with healthy eating and it went in like the complete opposite way. So I wasn't really restricting anymore, but I was still obsessed. I was like actually obsessed. So then fast forward to I am now a registered dietitian. I feel good. I have energy. I am eating pretty well balanced, nutrient dense foods. But I would still get comments like, cause I had lost some weight, not much, but I did lose some weight. And also I'm just like naturally just like I'm a curvy girl. And so I would get comments from people who would come to my office. This was before I had my own business and I worked for like another corporation. And I would frequently get comments like, how are you going to teach me to lose weight if you're, overweight yourself? I just was like, kept getting like, I just felt like nobody really took me seriously because I felt like I needed to look like the epitome of quote unquote what health was. And it's like, if I didn't have a six pack, well then therefore maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. And unfortunately, I guess I never really healed that inner child in me. And when I got older, I became more hyper focused, more hyper obsessed. And I almost like went back into disordered eating. And I became now hyper focused and fixated on like I needed to measure everything. I needed to count every single calorie and it was like stressing. It would stress me out if it didn't fit my macros. And it was basically like I was doing it in a more healthy, quote unquote, balanced way. But because my mindset was so back again to this place of I'm not being present with my loved ones. It's all I can think about. It's all I worry about. If I skip a workout, it wasn't even if I didn't undereat. It was more like if I didn't hit my macros perfectly. Like it became like an OCD sort of obsession. Like, so it was like undereating wasn't good and overeating wasn't good. It had to be perfect. And so it was now this new like hyper fixation. And so then that was led to, unfortunately I got so obsessed with it that I was exercising. I think maybe when you were on my podcast, I can't remember. I think I had just figured out like I was sick. I don't remember, but I ended up getting mono and SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and mono. So together, the combination, I was like beyond sick, and the energy was depleted. I couldn't work out, nothing. So everything that I had worked for, I had finally gotten where you could see the six pack a little bit. Like I had finally gotten to this place where I thought that meant like somehow I'm more credible. And unfortunately, all it did was just create me. Now I had to go the complete opposite because I literally was not allowed to work out because first of all, I didn't have the energy to, but I was advised by my doctor to just stop exercise altogether until you have the energy. I had to remove the calorie deficit. And I basically regained most of the weight back because I physically couldn't do the things that I was once doing before. And at the time, that really was very frustrating and very upsetting to me. But looking back now was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Literally, best thing that could have ever happened to me. Because that's how I got my book, Once Upon a Diet. That's how that's out in the world. That's how my messaging has changed. I help people. I really learned it really does not matter what the scale says. It does not matter. What matters the most is how you're caring for yourself. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And there is a way to find balance within that. So I would say that was probably the biggest transformation for me.
Well, I love hearing that story because, it is usually through those really yucky, uncomfortable times that we have the biggest growth spurts.
Yeah.
And, I know I wouldn't be able to relate to the people I talk to all the time if I hadn't gone through all my stuff either.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would I voluntarily sign up for that? Probably not. I mean, if I could just come out of the womb with a super healthy relationship with food and know exactly what my body needs and when to eat it, how to eat it and do it all, sure. I have honestly never met a person like that ever. And as we both know now, I've been on this planet for nearly 50 years. So
Yeah.
people who it seems like they have a healthy relationship with food, a lot of times, like you described, there is a fear or an anxiety or an obsession. And, I still have a little bit of that. I just wrote my September blog about how I know when I've been out of my structure for too long, I do get, okay, it's a little too many meals that I don't feel good about. It's a little too, too long going without a workout that I really feel good about. But it's a big difference from how I used to be, where I must work out while I have family here. And it's going to be the same kind of hard workout. I don't care if they're sitting there waiting for me. I'm going to go do my thing because I have to. And I am going to eat separately from everybody because I need to eat these foods and they need to eat those foods. And yet it's still a journey. It's still a process. It's still something that I think most people who do care about their health and their physical appearance have those thoughts go on, because let's face it, what you put in your body and how much and whether or not you move your body affects all of it. Your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. It affects all of it. And if you're 100% happy with your physical, mental, and emotional well-being, then you should keep doing what you're doing.
Exactly.
But if you're not, then something is probably going to need to shift. How do you let's go into your book, because I love it how you tie our thought patterns and just our patterns in general with relationships, as well as with maybe our food patterns and behaviors and thoughts. So tell us a little more about those parallels, and then we'll talk about like what do you do to help people bust out of that kind of mentality?
Yeah, so the book is called Once Upon a Diet, and it actually started as a TEDx talk that I gave in early 2020. And I only had 8 minutes to speak for the talk, and I remember thinking that is not enough time. I think I need to write a book. So I gave the talk and then I wrote my book, and I'm so glad that I did. But yeah, so what I had realized is when I finally healed my relationship with food, and, I figured out what worked best for me. I remember like so many women, before they would come into our program, I have a 6-month program where they help them to find food freedom, the thing that I finally was able to achieve after many years. And I remember thinking like, don't they see it? Like, don't they see that they basically are just doing the same diet just from a different book, like over and over and over again until like, don't they realize like it's not going to work? Like, right. And then I remember it was like, wait a minute, but like, Toni, like you've done the same thing in your dating life. Like, how many guys have you dated with the same name and with the same face, just with a different name? Like you've dated so many buttholes, excuse me, but like, and you never learned your lesson, and you miss all the red flags every single time. So like, how are you any different? And I realized, and I was like, oh my God, like that's the thing. We so desperately either want to lose the weight or find our partner that we will ignore the red flags time and time again because we just want that end result. But unfortunately, that's a pattern that we have to break, because you're never going to be happy in the long run. So it might, feed that short-term goal for you, but the long term, if you're really looking for something long term, like it's just not going to work that way. So that was the very first parallel that I had discovered, and that's mostly what my TED talk was about. But then in the book, I realized there were so many others. I mean, even from growing up, I grew up in the early 2000s, and I remember seeing even just like all the Disney princesses with the same hourglass figure. They basically just had either a different hair color, like that was really their only difference, or a different dress color, but they all had the same figure, and it was all about how they had to change themselves to get the guy, or like, it was all about them getting the guy. It was, that was all of the messages were the same. I grew up where I was watching like the people on the covers of magazines were like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, and I loved them and they were gorgeous, but they were, airbrushed to the nine, like, and, that was what was considered, the thing to look up to. So it was just like all of these things. It was like all of these messages that were getting poured into me. And I realized like a lot of the people I follow, like you just said, from old generation, they're seeing it too. Now it's just, instead of seeing it on a magazine or in a commercial, now it's like all on TikTok or Instagram. And so I just, that there was like there's so many other patterns, and that's why I wrote a book about it. But those were just like the very few that I realized, like, all right, we have to at least be aware that we're doing this. And I wanted to teach people how to be happy and healthy, regardless of the number on the scale and regardless of their relationship status, because it's not just the number on the scale or just the relationship. Like, it's the quality of how you got to that number or the quality of the relationship that actually matters.
That is such a great message. And for women, men, everybody to hear it sooner rather than later. I really hope, because I will tell you still, people my age and older, they still think there's a magic diet out there. They do. They come to me. They probably come to you all the time.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that's where I think anything worth it in life, there's nothing magic about it, right? It all takes time and effort and patience and strategy, and it really comes down to your habits, right? There's nothing magic. The magic is giving up this idea that there's a one size fits all approach or a supplement that you can take to make it all better. Like, the magic is the fact that you've had the power to do this your entire life, but you've just chose to disregard the messages that will actually help you and listen to the BS to, unfortunately, keep you stuck.
Absolutely. And what I like to say is the magic is the very unsexy answer of the healthy lifestyle.
That's it's just, you have to identify as it. Like, you just have to be, it's not what you're doing, it's who you are. I think once you make that switch, it becomes a lot easier. Like, you're not on a diet, you're not doing a diet. No, you're just choosing to be someone who takes care of themselves and who wants to feel good on a regular basis and who thinks a little bit ahead of time, because they know that it's easier to, have a balanced meal when they take the chicken out of the freezer so it defrosts overnight so they can cook it so that it's on their dinner plate the next day. Like, it's those little things, but they make a really, really big difference.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that you and I have chatted about too is just the commentary, right? Commentary from friends, from strangers, from family members. I mean, I clearly remember, and sometimes still, if I choose a salad, somebody has something to say about it. Like, oh, look at you, you're so good. I'm like, why? Right? It's like I'm the weird one, or I have like moral superiority because I've chosen salad over the burger and fries that you chose, or whatever. And there is no moral superiority. I'm not weird because I chose salad and you chose, just like I'm not weird when I eat a burger and fries, even though I'm the healthy girl. So how has that played in your life? Was that part of it, even through your process, and maybe even
yeah. Definitely. To believe it or not, unfortunately, my disordered eating patterns and habits, when they were really bad, because I was in a bigger body, they were missed. I was being praised for eating super, super quote unquote healthy and being super, super good and exercising all the freaking time. Like, I was being praised constantly. So you're so great how active you are. Oh my God, like you always eat vegetables. Like, I never see you eat anything fried. Like, and there was a point I was overeating on those things, which we can talk about later, because I was not ever satisfied, because I was never allowing any sort of pleasure in my mouth. But just to say on this topic, like, it unfortunately kept me stuck, because it was almost like I already knew, because we already know, unfortunately, if the big girl orders the burger and fries, they're kind of like looked at like with the side eyes. But also then if they order the salad, they're like, oh, good for you. And it's like, it's ridiculous that that's even a thing. But yeah, the commentary is unfortunately, it's still present. But one of the things that I love to teach people, and this is what I know that you help your clients do and we help our clients do, is we want you to be so in love with your choices, like that nobody else needs to love them. Like, right. So it's kind of just being so confident that you're choosing to get the salad tonight because it genuinely is what you're craving and it's going to make you feel good. And you want that. And then also there's some nights where you choose to get the burger and the fries because it's exactly what you're craving. And that if you got the salad, you're going to go home and binge later. So that's the choice for you. So regardless of who you're with and the comments that you receive, you almost learn to just deflect or change the subject or just ignore or whatever and just keep moving because you're so confident that you made that choice for you. So that's an example of food freedom, and that's really what we want to help people get to this place of, is just feeling empowered to make the best choices for them regardless of what other people have to say.
I love that. I know I used to get very defensive when people would highlight what I was or wasn't eating. I mean, there always had to be a spotlight on what the healthy girl is eating. And I would get really irritated and defensive about that. Like when I walk into, around, I don't highlight your job and I'm just a human too. Right. And yes. And someone's like, oh, you eat brownies. I can't believe that. Why wouldn't I? They're delicious. Yeah. And there was a time in my life where I ate way too many brownies way too often. And so I stopped doing that because I did a lot of hard work to figure my stuff out. But yes, I eat brownies and cake and cookies. My dad was just visiting not too long ago, and we had a Dairy Queen Blizzard and we had pizza in the span of 2 days. Like, oh my gosh, yes, Health Girl does that. Because that is what it means to have food freedom. Now, was there still a little piece in me that was like, oh, Dad, why did you have to say, honey, do you want to get a Blizzard? My life would be so much easier if you just had not asked me that, because of course I want to. Yeah. Right? And I said, I do, but let's not. But, yes, I do. And let's. And it was delightful.
Yeah.
Right? And it is about figuring out. Now, if my dad was visiting for 2 weeks and every day he said, honey, do you want to get a Blizzard? Well, at some point, probably after day 3, I'd be like, I do want to. However, I'm going to put the kibosh on this right now because I know for me how that can spiral really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that brings up the point that you said earlier about your newsletter that you wrote about, you kind of felt like you maybe had a few meals too many where you're like not feeling the best or whatever. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's the whole purpose of a healthy lifestyle. It's understanding, what are your limits? Like I actually just had one of our clients do this exercise where I had her really write out in every single area, like what's too much and what's not enough, because I think it's really important to identify that because everyone's so stuck in this all or nothing mentality. And, we know that we don't do well with the restriction, but we also don't do well with the overflow of things. So many people are stuck in that all or nothing mentality, but the reality is that life is flexible and fluid, and so your diet should be flexible and fluid, and your diet meaning just the foods that you eat. And so if you can clearly define, like, okay, I know that if I never have any sugar, it usually leads me to have excessive amounts of sugar. So, but I also know that if I have like too much, I also don't feel very well. So for some people, that is like allowing themselves to have like a cookie every day or a piece of chocolate every day. Whereas for other people, that's more so they have it, maybe once a week or something. And then they like to have like a full Sunday rather than just a little bit. It's everyone's different, right? Whereas some people are like, I don't even love sweets, but I love foods and I love fried food. So, it's like, what's your limit with that? And it's, never having it, probably feel deprived, but having it every day, probably not feeling so great. So like maybe you allow yourself to have it once or 2 times a week. Like do that with alcohol. Do that, believe it or not, with sleep, because I think some people, sometimes if you sleep too much, then you can't fall asleep the next night. And then you find like you're like really struggling with your sleep. So it's kind of knowing that you need a minimum of this much to function. But if you go overboard, then you have a hard time falling asleep the next night. Like it's just learning your like balance within that. And that's truly what a healthy lifestyle is it's not like a repeated like plan, really. It's a flexible one.
Oh, I totally agree. It's figuring out the harmony, right? Where you harmonize, where you and your habits harmonize to feel good and to function well and to enjoy life. And that is always going to change because there is no 2 days that are ever alike. There are no 2 months that are ever alike. There are no 2 years that are ever alike. You
Right.
told me today are going to be very different in a year and maybe even in a week, right? We don't even know. And I think that is, it always starts with the mindset, always. And I mean, the all or nothing mindset is something I talk about a lot. And it certainly was a big obstacle for me, right? Because I'm going to be really, really, really good. And then I wasn't. And so then I was really, really, really not good, right? And that was absolutely a critical adjustment that I made that helped me move into a much healthier, happier space. What are some other tips that we get from Toni that you help your clients with, just properly nourishing? So let's actually go back to that. Even, I grew up with the food pyramid and would choose my plate, both of which are horrible. And I have a minor in nutrition, and I was still taught all of that horrible information. So how has nutrition education changed? I am not a registered dietitian, but I still feel like I know a lot about nutrition through my own life experience and educating myself. But what are they teaching actually in formal nutrition, a nutrition class or course or academically these days?
Well, I mean, I've also been out of college for like 10 years now, but I do have to keep up on continuing education credits in order to keep my degree. The choose my plate is still pretty standard. It's just encouraging, all the different food groups. I do believe in the plate method. I do find it very helpful for clients. So I will encourage at least one of their meals be half vegetables, a quarter protein, and a quarter starch. But beyond that, I mean, I couldn't really tell you what they're currently teaching in school. I mean, I guess some of my newer dietitians could probably tell me, but either way, I give them what I know helps our clients. So I'm all about practicality. So there's what the science says, and then there's like, how can we implement this and how do our clients get results? So either way, I believe in individuality. There's one thing that I could say that across the board, most people would benefit from including, all macronutrients at each meal. So a carbohydrate, a protein, a fat, and then a fruit or a vegetable, so that they have some sort of, also like nutritional, like more micronutrient nutritional component. That I find that when people do that at least 3 meals a day, they feel satisfied. They tend to at least meet their basic need. They meet their, their carbohydrate needs, their protein needs, their fat needs. And it also helps with digestion too. So this idea that they need to be eating every 2 to 3 hours, I think for some people that might be helpful, but for other people it maybe gets them in trouble. So that's usually like a very standard thing. But with that, we work with the clients with what they're currently doing. For some people, they might not even be eating breakfast, or they might not be eating lunch, or, whatever it is, or they're snacking at night or whatever that is. So we usually take a look at what they're currently eating, and then based on their goals, their activity level, their, access to food or their ability to cook and all those things, we'll really work on those small changes. So having something that's, having like a complex carbohydrate that's high in fiber, most often it's usually going to be better for regulating blood sugars, for, helping with decreasing the, chances of high cholesterol. Fiber pulls cholesterol out of the blood. It will help with your bowel movement and regularity. It also helps with fullness, staying fuller for longer, so not feeling like hungry right after you just ate. So we usually encourage complex carbohydrates most often, some sort of a healthy fat, so you get some or omega-3s, something to support your heart health, to help counter some inflammation, a protein, usually like a lean protein source, unless it's like fish, like a fatty fish, that's always great. But even if they did choose like a more fattier meat, it's totally okay. It's more so just teaching them to maybe use healthier cooking methods like grilling, baking, broiling, stuff like that, limiting the fried stuff. And then making sure that there's a fruit or a vegetable present. So that way you're getting some color on the plate. They're usually going to be more nutrient dense. And, usually we're more so helping them with like their mindset and relationship with food. So we're not really big on calorie counting, although we will educate them about calories if it's necessary. And as long as they don't become obsessed with it, we will do that. But typically just by having that structure at each meal, they're probably going to stay within their calories without having to count them. And they don't really need to weigh or measure anything, because it's like what fits on the plate. And they're usually nutrient dense food. So it's very filling. And then, it really satisfies them and brings them to their next meal. So that's like a pretty standard thing that we teach. So some of those are influenced from what we learn in school, but most of it is from just seeing results in our clients.
And for those who listen to me all the time, you might recognize what Toni just described as PFF, right? Protein, fat, fiber. PFF is your BFF.
Yeah.
That's the book
I know a lot of clinicians and nutrition coaches and like people they'll say they have like there's different terms they'll use. I think one of my friends, she's an RD, she does PFCP or something like that, right? I don't know what she does it, but it's very similar. Like they all have like their own terms with it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's just to help educate people. Okay, well, what food gives me protein? What food gives me fat? What food is a high fiber food? And I think that education of what foods give us what nutrients, regardless if we are going to school to be dietitians or nutritionists, or simply because we're human and we should know how to fuel our bodies. Unfortunately, we don't get taught properly in so many ways. So yeah, and all the things you mentioned, totally in line. I mean, it keeps us full because of fiber and fat, and it keeps our blood sugar steady and all of those great reasons. So I love that method, and it's very simple, right? Simple to visualize. People can visualize, okay, what can I put on a plate? And then yeah, tweaking where and when necessary. Do you find, I still find this, do you ever find that a lot of people come to you and they're actually not eating enough? They're in starvation mode?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if they're necessarily in starvation mode, but they're just not eating enough for their calorie needs. They're not meeting their calorie needs. They're definitely, I mean, it can be anything from someone who's like overtraining and not eating enough to fuel their workouts and for their recovery process, but also, or someone who maybe isn't even exercising and they're not hungry because they're not moving a lot. And so they eat a little something during the day. Maybe the dinner is their only thing that they eat and they're tired and they just go to sleep. So it's like very under eating that way. But yeah, that's very common as well.
Yeah, it's something that I still find a lot of people, even their doctor has suggested they go on, some 1,200 calorie diet.
I know, it's so frustrating.
It is. Yeah.
It's so frustrating. Yeah, the 1,200 calorie diets or less even. Some of the more like popular diets now that are coming out are even, some of theirs are encouraging like 900 calories a day and no exercise. It's insane. If the diet tells you not to exercise like at all, please don't do it.
Right?
Like that's crazy. Yeah. No, definitely not. You don't want to do that because that's what damages the metabolism. And then people get frustrated when they come to us because we're teaching them sustainable weight loss. So they're not going to see weight loss every single week. They're definitely not going to see, 5 to 10 pounds in their first week or 2 weeks or whatever. Like it's going to take, on average, our clients, if weight loss is a goal for them, maybe it depends how much weight they have to lose, but like, maybe 5 pounds a month, honestly, because we're doing it in a very slow and sustainable way. So that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you take 5 times 6, that's 30 pounds. That's still great, right? And it's sustainable. And, I think a lot of people are in this like rush they think faster is better. No, if anything, faster, you could argue, is probably harder. It's going to be harder for you in the long run. You're not going to be able to keep it off. And then unfortunately, because you did it really quickly, your metabolism now has compensated as a result, and it's now slower, and it makes it harder to lose more weight in the future.
Yeah, it's still an interesting challenge that I face, is educating people about that. And I often encourage people to just don't even worry about the weight loss. Let's understand how to fuel your body properly.
Yeah.
And when you do that, if weight loss is the goal, it'll probably happen. And if it's not happening, then we need to adjust and address the things, because there's clearly something that's off.
Right.
And so to just take the weight loss piece out of it. That'll be a side effect of doing the things correctly. But yet, because we've been so ingrained in needing to see the result, it's not working. No, it is. You just need to keep on doing it. So I think that's probably something that you and I and everybody are going to have to just continue to encourage people to have faith that what we are teaching you actually works. And it's the old tortoise and the hare story, right? You can get there fast and then what? or you can do it slow, steady, and have the result forever.
Yeah.
And I know I've been down the on again, off again road, and most people have. And then you decide, okay, clearly this isn't a long-term solution. Maybe I need to go down a different road. Let's talk a little bit more in a few minutes that we have left about how maybe your own life changed in terms of relationship. And, you said you dated the same guy with a different name over and over and over. So now you've adjusted your mindset around, your food relationship. Has that parlayed into anything in a personal relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I mean, it's really cool to not stress and worry about date night. It's really cool to know, like, sometimes I eat more than my boyfriend does and I don't judge myself for it. Other times, like, it's also super great because he's not one to, I feel like in the past, I maybe have dated guys that were like judgy about my food, or they would make comments, or they would, I was like not fun because like I never wanted to get ice cream. Whereas like my boyfriend like doesn't care. He's like, and he'll get ice cream and I won't, or sometimes we get it together, or sometimes I get it. And most of the time he never really passes on it. I will say that. But like he is just very like, you do you. Like, he's not judgmental. So I think that's always a good sign to know that you have a partner that's not going to make you feel, like you should have, more if you don't want to have more, or anything like that. But I think even beyond that, though, it comes to like just like a confidence of being with somebody who, and I don't even think it's really so much about him. I think it's more about me finally recognizing that I don't need to be in a certain body size in order to be worthy of love, right? It's like knowing that he will love me at any stage and size. And, if we do end up doing the full thing, getting married, having kids, like I'm going to be in many different sizes of my body. And like, I know he'll love me. But more importantly, like I will love me. And I think that I've attracted him because I do love me. Like, he's just that type of person that will accept me in all ways. And it's cool to be able to like recognize that and receive that. Because I know a lot of women that actually are with partners that are really like, they love them, they're obsessed with them, but the spouse on the other end can't feel that love or receive that love, and they feel like, so they're the one that's not confident in the bedroom. They're the ones that don't want to go out on date night. They're the ones that like is stressed about like putting on the dress or whatever. Meanwhile, their partner is like obsessed with them, and it's just, there's so much that they could be they're missing out on. And so I think it's been a cool transformation for me to be able to feel and receive all of the love that I probably could have been receiving for most of my life. I just never even recognized it.
Well, I think that's such a great point, is that, we do often seek outside validation. And yet, unless you have that internal validation and confidence,
It'll never be like it's enough. Yeah.
Right. Right. It's never enough, or you're just not going to even believe it, or you're going to self-sabotage. And so then you say, see, I told you so anyway, right? There's all kinds of things that I think we probably, yeah. It's such a great parallel. I'm going to go back into my own, vault of, relationships and think about those parallels that I might have had with my relationship with food as well. I'm sure there are tons of them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's one in my book, I talk about it also too, kind of just like getting into the routine of things, and kind of just like recognizing like, like you kind of catch yourself where you are, you constantly like say like, oh, I'm going to be good tonight, right? I'm going to eat well and I'm not going to like overeat and snack. And then you wake up the next day with like candy wrappers all around you. And it's the reflection. If you look back, it's like, well, you start to realize like, okay, every single night we watch what he wants to watch. Like, you let him pick the restaurant. You kind of like lose your power, because also that people pleasing really comes to play in relationships and stuff like that. And you start to realize that it's because you lost the I don't know, like the thing that made the relationship exciting. Like, you kind of just got caught up into like your ways. And so now you're looking for, the love and the passion through like a bag of chips. It's like, that's not the reason why you're emotionally eating in this way, is because there's a part of the relationship or a part of you're just missing fun. You're missing excitement. You're missing something new. You're just, you're just going through the motions in life. And that's another thing that we can kind of take a look at. So that's just another parallel that I have people recognize. Like, emotional eating is a big thing, and it's something that we definitely help our clients with. And it might not be related to like how you're living your life, because it could be just be like your relationship with food, but often it's usually both. You find that it's your relationship with food that's causing the emotional eating, but also like maybe there's a component to your life where there's something missing, and we need to like work on, doing something different, finding a passion project, getting outside of your routine, and then maybe you wouldn't be looking for excitement through food.
Yeah, I think we turn to food to fill a void, right? And for some people, they turn to alcohol to fill that void,
Right.
or to retail therapy, or to gaming, or whatever. Anything that we turn to fill a void is, clearly not taking care of the issue. It's a Band-Aid, and then it's actually one that probably makes things worse in the end.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fun catch-up conversation. I'm going to encourage everybody to follow you on Instagram, because you got that. You got that down pat. I love it. I love watching you. I love seeing you blossom. You've branched out into real estate, and just seeing all these adult things that you're doing. And I'm always impressed when I see somebody that I've gotten to chat with personally, and just to watch you continue to grow and blossom. And I'm telling you, the world needs people like you. And so yay that they have you, that people can come to you for help. And we'll put all of your contact info in the show notes. Anything before we officially wrap up that maybe we missed, or you want people to make sure that they know about you?
No, well, definitely if you want to get my book, Once Upon a Diet, you can get it on Amazon. Other than that, if you need anything, message me. I'm very active on Instagram and always happy to answer any questions you have.
Yes. Well, this has been great, Toni. Thank you so much. I look forward to continuing to see what you have going on and what's next for you. And hopefully, listeners, you have a couple of nuggets to take away from this, and you will run with them to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.